Well, good evening, everybody. Now, it's good to be back, isn't it? And we're going to be talking about Forest versus Bournemouth, the game that went wrong, to be honest. And it seems that the Midlands has had a bit of a bad curse over the last 24 hours. Obviously, Derby losing by the same score and Leicester coming to lose 5-2. Not that I'm bothered about those two scores, but I want to talk about our score. We lost 3-2 to a team that was in the first half they looked definitely beatable, but I still thought that they looked like they had something brewing within them that I was worried would come out in the second half, and unfortunately it did. So I'm joined by Max tonight, who was on the last stream to come and talk about that game. So Max, firstly, how are you doing?
Yeah, I've been better. It's amazing how one football result can change your mood and your whole perspective on life. But and as Forest fans, we've not been used to losing. So yeah, it's been a difficult one. But hopefully I'll be able to give a bit of insight. We'll see.
Well, definitely, and also I just want to thank everybody that is joining in. 50 of you now. Thank you all for taking the time out to come and have a little watch. And don't forget that there will be an invite link put down in the description in just a few moments as well for anybody interested in joining. So Jason, Kel, Samba's Lump, Declan, Key, and I hope you're all doing well. Samba, the days of Samba, eh? Well, look, let's start off by saying, it certainly wasn't our day at the office, right? It was disappointing, to say the least, obviously, considering, we weren't exactly on a high. Obviously, we just lost against Tottenham and Man City, but equally, we'd still got a win in the bank, we'd still got a draw in the bank, and it wasn't rubbish considering the teams that we played, but equally gutting. But that Bournemouth one has put, I think, the Premier League into real perspective for Forest fans, because as I said in the stream, on the last stream, please don't underestimate your opponent. And the fact that this is not going to be an easy game. This will be a real challenge. But I do ask the question, could it have been an easier game? And did we just make it more of a challenge? What do you think?
Is that aimed at me, Jamie, or is that at the chat?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, both of you. Yeah, I should have
Right.
put that more clear. But Max, tell me what you think.
I wholeheartedly believe we could have made that an easier game. I said to a few people after the game, if we were 2-0 up against City and we'd have lost 3-2, we'd still be disappointed. Now, it would not be quite the same level of frustration and in some cases anger at yesterday's performance, which I think in many ways is understandable, but you'd still be disappointed. We played, and I said before, I agreed with you before the game, Jay, that we shouldn't underestimate Bournemouth, that they weren't going to go lying down. And when they came out from their half time about 2 minutes before the Forest lads, I thought they're up for this here. But as long as we set up well, as long as we sort of have sort of a clear way of playing, particularly going forward, so that we're not inviting a load of pressure, then we've got this in the bag. We have to, if we want to play at this level. And so, whilst I certainly think that Bournemouth were there for the taking, I think we made it a whole lot difficult for ourselves with a variety of things, and I'm sure we'll go into it. But for me, it's team selection, it's tactical setup, not necessarily formation, but just where the play's going through. I think we made a rub for our own back.
And it's, also you've got to think we've spent 150 million. And I'm not concerned about the money we've spent or the players we've bought. It's too early to even say, oh, we spent 150 million. I'm fuming on this and this. At the end of the day, we haven't seen anywhere near the full potential. And for some players, we've not even seen more than a game and a half of them. Look at Mangala, you look at Niakate, unfortunately not been able to show off what they've got due to injury. And that's just something that happens in football anyway. But good evening to everybody joining in. We're going to answer all your questions as soon as. We're just going to give you a bit of pre-chat before we get on to them. Now, 150 million doesn't buy you wins. Okay, it buys you a team that could potentially get wins. And then it's down to the management and coaches to make, to mould that team together and to put a good starting 11 out each week with substitutes that can be swapped on here and there. That will make an impact on the game. Because for me during that game, and I'm not going to go out and slate any players because I don't believe in that. But I would look at that game and I would say people were slating Jesse Lingard, which I found a bit odd on social media. Now, feel free to call me out for this in the chat or whatever. But For me, I think Jesse Lingard actually had quite a good first half. I think he showed something that I haven't seen in him since he started at Forest. I think he looked a little bit fitter. I just still don't think he's there yet. It's got to come at some point. But I think that there was a bit more promise in that first half, but it seemed to dip a little bit in the second half. So, bringing him off wasn't the wrong thing to do. I'm not denying that. But he had actually quite a good game. And the problem for me, and I'm gonna go straight into it because I still believe in Cooper, and I think everybody that doesn't believe in him, that's your choice. But the people that booed him off yesterday, I was truly embarrassed to be a Forest fan at that point, because no matter how bad things are, or no matter how bad things were that day, to boo off a manager that has brought us from bottom of the Championship to bring us up to where we are is incredible. And I'm not saying let's just look at that and go, no matter how many losses we have, let's just accept it. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying look at what he has done and what he can do. We just need to get behind him and play our role as the 12th person, And for me, I think that there was things we could have changed, like the substitutions, as you mentioned. But I think that will come with time, and I think he'll be criticising himself, and he's probably not stopped thinking about it since that game. But for me, the thing that kind of threw me off a little bit was the Colback substitution. I've got nothing against Colback because he wasn't awful when he came on. But you need, if we want to start scoring goals, you've got to have a fast counter-attack from that midfield specifically. And why wouldn't you play someone like Lewis O'Brien, who's been in his complete prime, and probably one of our best players, if not the best player, since the start of the season? What did you think of that substitution?
I said in my recent video, Jamie, that I was actually with some Bournemouth fans because I lived in Bournemouth for 8 years and I moved back recently. And we were in just at the brew house over Trent Bridge. And when I was feeling very confident, not because I thought that Bournemouth would be a pushover, but because I'd seen a lot of positives in the West Ham, Everton and Spurs games for me. And I was feeling really confident. And that I was sort of checked a little bit when I saw the team sheet. And I could not quite understand why Lewis O'Brien didn't play. And then as the game progressed, and again, I completely agree with you. I think Colback is obviously a leader on and off the pitch. He's done a lot for the club. But I don't think he was the right player for the context of that game. Lewis O'Brien was warming up for quite a long time, so clearly there's no injury issues there. I do just think that was ultimately a poor decision. Now, it feels strange to say that because we've had hardly anything negative to ever say about Steve Cooper, and rightly so. He's become this sort of figure for the city because of what he's done. But I can't help but think that there is an error there in not starting or at least bringing on Lewis O'Brien, because for me, I was in the Peter Taylor stand, and I watched Nico Williams in that first half have absolutely no options in centre midfield. And, I don't think Yates and Kouyaté were communicating particularly effectively. You mentioned in the last stream that you noticed, a potential conflict between Worrell and Kouyaté, and I actually saw that on the pitch as well. And whilst I don't think that's a massive deal, like I say, I'd rather Worrell be sort of driving standards and going for people if he doesn't think they're doing their jobs. But Yates and Kouyaté they just didn't know where they were. And so for me, Lewis O'Brien would have been absolutely perfect because he's so quick, he comes deep, he gets counter-attacks going, he'll get himself in the box. And when you're drawing 2-2 and the tide is turning against you, against a Bournemouth side who've got their backs against the wall in every sense of the word, both on the pitch and off the pitch, something has to change. And with the greatest respect to the Ginger Perlo, bringing Jack Colback on, for me, was not the right decision. But look, I don't want to catastrophise. I'm not willing to sit here and say, oh, we're going to get relegated. I've heard people compare Cooper already to Chris Hughton after the last 3 performances, which I just cannot quite comprehend the logic there. I think Steve Cooper is a superior manager in every way, and that he's got the intelligence and the calibre to turn this around. So I'm not in that camp just yet. I hope I don't have to get there, but there does need to be some significant changes for me. And whilst the defence certainly needs looking at, because we've conceded lots of goals, I completely understand. For me, it's the complete lack of cohesion and the lack of direction in the midfield and moving forward. And for me, that starts with not having a really nice striker. But yeah,
it's not a nice result, and the way that we lost as well.
Yeah.
Wasn't a late goal, it wasn't a goal that was like, oh, it's so unlucky, nobody would have saved that. I mean, the Philip Billing goal, I mean, it was a fantastic goal. You've got to give it to him. They scored 2 good goals, but that last one, of course, a mistake, and it was unfortunate. We'll get on to McKenna a bit later because I'm a massive fan of McKenna, and I always will be. Perhaps I owe him one for calling him Figueiredo once by accident when I didn't have my glasses on, but maybe that's a different story. But I think when it comes to the midfield and the communication, I don't know if it's a Ryan Yates problem specifically or a Kouyaté problem specifically. For me, I don't think that Kouyaté seems to be the best of communicators from what we've seen of him in the last couple of games, and that's something that can be worked on for sure. But I didn't think that putting someone like Ryan Yates and Kouyaté on yesterday was the right thing to do. And I don't want to sound horrible when I say this because I like all of the homegrown lads and I think they've all been good. And I certainly think that Ryan Yates has made a step up of some form. But if you were going to ask me of what midfielders I'd put on, and by the way, I got sent the team sheet the night before, which is obviously a problem within the club. We've already heard about the leaks and the leaks being a reason why, or there's reports saying that there's a bit of discomfort for Steve Cooper because of leaks of his contract situation. That's what's going around. I'm not going to say that that's true or not. But the leaks, when I saw the squad, I wasn't that impressed. I looked at it and I thought, well, there's not really much change to the attacking situation, which, for me would literally just be as simple as moving Gibbs White back one place and putting a 1E in front of him with Jono, which I don't mind. Obviously, we've spoke about different formations and stuff, but you've also got to think about the disruption that brings as well. So I think there's arguments for and against, and this is a horrible decision that Steve Cooper has to make, but it's important for his job. It's crucial for his job, and more importantly, the club as a whole. And when I saw the midfield, I thought Ryan Yates and Kouyaté. I mean, if Bournemouth's pacey, decently pacey attack gets past those, well, I mean, where do you even go? I saw, their right winger. I can't remember who the guy was. I can't remember who it was, but they were running down the right hand side of the pitch, and Kouyaté was trying to catch up to him, and you just thought that's actually quite embarrassing. This player wouldn't need much physicality to take him down, but something that I've seen from Lewis O'Brien is not something ridiculously kind of comparative with what Zinkernagel used to do, but he would always run back and get the ball off the players at Everton and other games. And for me, I didn't think you needed huge amounts of physicality in that midfield against the Bournemouth side. You just needed players that could play well, pass around well, experienced players like Freuler. He's 30. He's just recently played in a Champions League team, one of the best teams in Italy. Why isn't he getting a look in? Why isn't O'Brien playing? There was no fitness reason for him not to play. He was ready to come on when Kouyaté went down. It confused me. It confused me a lot. And there's all this talk about the height in the midfield and stuff. And I understand that. But why on earth have we got a slow midfield and then you're just relying on Lingard or whoever just in front to do the rest of the work for them? That can't be right for me. And I didn't understand that decision, to be honest with you. And I'm not going to make out that I've got some FA coaching qualification or anything, because I don't by any means. But I think I can at least say it was a bit disappointing when I saw that midfield. And I do want to start with the midfield first before I get onto all the positions. So what did you make of it? You saw that Kouyaté and Yates were there. Did you have any prejudice before that game, or did you wait until after the game to form your opinion on it?
Well, the game certainly helped me form have a better informed opinion. But yeah, of course I had a prejudice. Kouyaté's he's a little bit of a journeyman in the Premier League. He's done well. But when you've got someone who's already proven himself in the form of Lewis O'Brien, like you say, you've got someone like Freuler who's not played yet, but really from a good caliber of player. It did baffle me a little bit. But then I sort of tried to think Cooper must have seen something in training. There must be a reason for this, whether it's tactical or sort of fitness-wise. But just on a wider level, what frustrated me is we're playing at home at the City Ground, a place where we're used to winning, where we are used to taking it to whoever the opponent is, whether it's a lower championship team or whether it's Liverpool in the FA Cup last season, we take the game to the opponent. And for me, that starting 11, it didn't speak of, we're going to win this game, or we're coming for you, Bournemouth. And whilst we were 2-0 up at half time, that was a very flattering scoreline, and you could say, Max, you've been far too critical of Kouyaté. He scored the first goal. But then I sort of think, well, actually, he's only scored that goal through natural ability. You know, that's not been a great footballing goal. Yes, it was a good cross from Morgan Gibbs-White from the corner, but you know, it's not from like a really good sort of run of possession and then attacking play that's led to a goal. So the midfield was, I think there's still bigger problems up top. You know, not playing in the best league in the world, the most competitive league in the world without a recognised striker, spending 17 million quid on someone that scored 16 goals in the Bundesliga and then just bringing him off on the bench when there's work to do. You know, if you really want a player like Taiwo to sort of make his mark, you've got to trust him. You've got to give him time. You've got to give him time to work with the likes of Johnson and Gibbs-White. But I digress. I think it was a big mistake in the midfield. I think O'Brien had to start, and I think most people would probably agree with that. Why Steve Cooper has made that decision, only he knows. But in many ways, what this probably will do is give Cooper that little bit more clarity on who he isn't starting. I don't quite think Cooper, I think we can all see he's not, and it's very difficult to decide because you've signed so many players, but I think we can all agree Cooper's probably not decided who he's going to start. But I think it might be safe to say that Kouyaté won't be one of those players, and therefore O'Brien has to be, because he's been so good. But I still don't know, Jamie, why he didn't come off the bench. But, you know, it's in the past now.
And it's frustrating. Yeah, it is in the past. So, you know, and you know what? I woke up this morning and it was, you know, you always feel gutted. Do you know what I mean? And it's like I'm having to report on a game and they're coming in for me and they're like, you know, what's going on at the City Ground? And I'm just like, I don't even want to tell you, to be honest, because I'm embarrassed to say that I'm actually watching and I've just witnessed what I've witnessed. Yeah. And
it is so disappointing, Jamie. It is. It really is. But one thing that I've been trying to do today is remind myself how positive I was even after the City 6-0 loss, because of what we'd seen. Like I keep saying, West Ham, Everton and Spurs. We lost. We only won one of those games, but the feeling was very much confident. And I think that part of the reason we don't feel that anymore is because of how lackluster that performance was and how sort of toothless it felt at times. But I do think that it's very fixable. You know, that I think, like you say, you and I don't have FA coaching badges, but we've been watching football for a long time and we can see, you know, a couple of things that are quite obvious. Play with a goal scorer. You know, sort your central midfield out, and you know, get a centre back in there that's got some actual pace. You know, whilst that's not going to make us sort of get 6 points out the next 2 games, I do think that it's fixable. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I totally understand fans' frustration. I woke up at 4 o'clock this morning, and it was the first thing I thought. It was dreadful, but. So I understand that frustration. I really do. I'm not trying to minimise how poor a performance that was and the responsibility that Cooper and the players need to take. However, it's one game and I think that we can fix it. So I'm trying. I guess it's more like a word about trying not to catastrophise and make it worse than it is. But I guess having 9 days between the games means we're going to be stewing over it for a while.
We are, and we're going to be stewing over it for the rest of the season. You know, we're going to look back at it in how many months' times and go look at that game where, and you know, perhaps we'll be in a better position by then, or maybe we'll be in a worse position. You just don't know. Let's hope it's a better one. You know, touch what it is. But you can only hope for that. And you know, and I just want to say in this question for me, or this point really, about the rumours going around the club, I just want to say this. I don't know anything more than anybody listening now, but I'll tell you this. I would not believe 90% of the things coming out. Not even that. I would not even believe 99% of things coming out. It's rubbish. There's a problem at the club of squad sheets being leaked. There's a problem at the club of leaks overall. It's not something that I know any more about, you know, than I would like to. You know, and that's causing frustration for players and Cooper. So I think that's probably, I mean, that is what I would say is a problem. I would say it's something in the back of everybody's mind at Forest at the moment, you know, and that's not a nice thing to think about. I think there's obviously Steve Cooper feels the pressure coming into him now, and you can see that just in his face and the way he's talking, you know. But you know, there's, as he says, you know, he's looking back at what he's done, and he's the one that needs to take responsibility for what happened, you know. And as much as I do agree to an extent that he should, you know, he's still put out an 11 that can get a result from Bournemouth. He's put out a starting 11 that can do something. And yes, there should have been a number 9 in different midfielders. I'm not disputing that. And I definitely think it's the way it should have been. But the players, for me, they didn't even look like they were giving 50% at times. And for me, that was disappointing. So I do want to ask you, what do you think about the idea of a 4-3-3 potentially? Now, I wouldn't have even suggested it until not long ago because I like the idea of Loddy and Williams as wing backs. But it seems they've been doing more defending over the last couple of games than actually being wing backs. And obviously, we know that Loddy put in a few good crosses from impossible locations, which was brilliant. But Jono as the right wing and Dennis as the left wing and Awani up front with Morgan Gibbs-White as a 10. It seems an interesting idea, but we need more in midfield, don't we? And it was at City, actually, funnily enough, where one of their staff came up to me and said, do you want to know Forest's biggest problem in that game? How on earth can you have the two midfielders there? How? I don't know how you can do that. And that's why you're being beat 3-0 at half time. And that wasn't a nice thing to hear, but it's been a problem that's been brewing up over a few games. But at times it almost feels un-Cooper-like to have made that substitution. As much as I know that he likes Colback and stuff, that game for me, it just didn't seem like something that Cooper would usually do. Do you know what I'm saying about that? Like, I don't know if this is just looking from the outside.
No.
I don't know what. I don't know. It just didn't seem right.
I think he might have made that substitution, Jamie, because he's looked at what he's seen on the pitch, and he's thought, I need a leader at this point. I need someone that I can trust. If I don't want to speak about these rumours because, like you say, I've only seen a couple of them, and we don't actually know, so it's only conjecture. But there's obviously some frustration there from Cooper, and I think he's probably just thought, I know Colback, I know he's going to give 100%. That has to enter his mind, right? Because otherwise, why hasn't he brought O'Brien or Freuler on? In terms of the formation, ultimately, what I'm reluctant to do is to make wholesale panicked changes. Now, I know we've lost the last 3 games, so you could say Max has every reason to panic. We've not accumulated any points since Everton, but I just think what needs to happen, if Brennan Johnson plays wider on that right-hand side, Nico Williams is going to be less isolated and is therefore going to be able to sort of play that role as a wing-back more effectively, support Joe Worrell on the right when necessary, but also have some more attacking gusto going up. Equally, what I think Zinkernagel was great at last year, like you say, was that tracking back and being someone up and down the left wing. So Lodi didn't really have anyone to give the ball to yesterday because you've got these 3 central, this central fluidish 3 in Lingard, Gibbs-White and Johnson that I don't really think have clarity on where they need to be and what they need to do. Or they've probably been given those instructions from Cooper, but they've never played necessarily in that format. And so it's all quite foreign to them. So what I'm essentially saying is I'd like him to keep it as a back 3 or back 5, whatever you say, but really really sort of empower Johnson and, for my mind, Dennis to play where Zinkernagel did last season. And just to make sure that they're playing wide. And that's what both of them are good at. However, I'm not against moving to a 4-3-3 or whatever formation that is, particularly if we need to shore up the defence and play a little bit flatter at the back.
Well, I mean, there's a million different formations you can use, isn't there? I mean, I'm not saying from my expertise on Football Manager that I could give Steve Cooper any advice of what formation to use. But we're going to talk about the fans in particular and their reaction to yesterday's result. And I want to ask Michaela, who I know was just looking at the floor there for a moment, so I just wanted to make sure she knew I was here. There we go. Now, welcome to the stream. You're making your stream debut, so welcome. Now, obviously, very vocal on Twitter. I saw after the game, and it's unfortunate with nothing wrong. You were right, actually. I thought you were spot on with what you said, but perhaps some of the fan reaction to the players and not really constructive criticism being aimed at them, but just pure abuse, really. I just want to know your thoughts on how the fans reacted to that game. Was the booing a bit uncalled for?
I hate it. I don't look. We all have opinions, and we all have the right as fans to have opinions. I've supported this team for long enough, and 30 years of good times and bad times. But I hate booing. I hate personal name calling. I just think there's no. The players see it, and I don't care who they are and what they are and how big they are. It's not going to help our team by slagging them off after the game or booing them off. They know. Scott McKenna knows he made a huge mistake. He knows. There's no one, Barry from Bulwell isn't going to tell him that he's, you should have kicked it out. Like, I think he knows. He's a professional football player. That guy was absolutely magnificent last season. He's a brilliant footballer, and he's given us all. That team deserve a huge amount of respect, and they have to have a bit of money in the bank, and we owe them that. This is a team that's been thrown together. They've barely played together, and to boo them off and to become so negative after a couple of games is ridiculous. We should have beaten Bournemouth. Yes, I agree completely. I'm not stupid, but to throw the baby out with the bathwater and call for Cooper's head and all this it's just ridiculous. It's like, get a reality check, people. So, I do not like Houghton. I booed that man. I hated him. I hated his football. I wasn't booing the team. I was booing him. It was toxic and awful, but that took a long time. To boo Cooper and that team I just think is a disgrace, personally.
And to be divided this early on in the season is a massive disadvantage to us as well, because if the club becomes divided, if the fans become divided and the players become divided, at that point you may as well be relegated, and that's my worry, because I think that the atmosphere at the club is becoming toxic, and really it doesn't have to be that way, because if we could just get behind our players and our team and just and just try and create at least something a little bit more positive out of a difficult situation. And yes, there's not a lot of positives you can take away from that game and say we were brilliant or anything like that. But, look ahead. Well, how many games are we in? 6 games in now?
Yes,
and
exactly.
And we're already saying, let's sack the manager. Let's do this. We'd have to restructure the club. We'd have to change everything.
It's ridiculous. Who's going to come in? Who's better than Cooper? Name someone that can come in. It's ridiculous. That guy gets it. He gets Forest. We've waited for this man for 23 years. We've waited for someone like him to come in and transform our club, and he's done it. I think he's under incredible pressure. I can imagine the pressure is unbearable at the moment for all of them. I know these players it's like the sword of Damocles every game, isn't it? And now we've got 9 days of all this crap on Twitter to read. And all the negativity and stuff. Let's just. I get it. I'm not perfect, and I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, it's all rosy and it's all going to be perfect. But there's got to be a little sense of reality of where we've come and who we are, and where we're going, because we're going to have to. These other teams have had 20 years of being in the Premier League. They've had all this. We've had to build from the bottom up, haven't we? So I think we've just got to. And I love our atmosphere, our ground. Every team that's come have said it's been brilliant, haven't they? And our away fans are magnificent. There's no better. We are the 12th man. I think it's been superb. In recent years, it was never like that. And the home crowd, it was hard to get a tune out of anybody. So I just hope that we don't to turning on each other, people fighting in the stands and stuff. It's ridiculous. It's just come on, guys. You don't want to slap people. Remember when, come on. It was only a couple of months ago we were all on top of the world. So yeah.
If only everyone had that perspective, Michaela, I couldn't agree more about let's remember where we've come from. Let's remember that the job's not going to get any easier for Steve Cooper and the club being in the Premier League and making all these necessary signings. And we were always going to have these lows. I think that I've seen.
Man City was going to happen, wasn't it? I mean, God, it would have been a miracle. I believe in these players. I was one of the people that wanted to keep the band together more. I'm more of a traditionalist. I'm loyal. I'd love to have kept Spence. I'd love to have kept Garner. I'd like to have kept it more. I think it would have helped him more personally. I think our old team probably would have done better personally, just because of the nature of football and throwing these people together and being right, go out and play football. So in my ideal world, we would have kept Spence, we would have got Davis back, we would have got a Jimmy Garner, and I think maybe it would have been better. I don't know. I'm a 45-year-old woman. I don't know miles from my elbow when it comes to football. But I think it's so tough for these players and for, people like Joe Worrell. That guy bleeds Forest. His whole family support Forest. He supported Forest since he was a kid. To see the kind of crap that people have been writing about him is, don't tag him, for Christ's sake, for one thing, and have your opinion, but maybe think about it a bit more before you put your pen to your paper and kind of McKenna. It's just ridiculous. Give them a little bit of time. Give Cooper the respect and time. I would be happy if we got relegated that we keep Cooper. That's how much I think he deserves time. And, I think the Greeks are going to be so crazy and they want to finish in the top 6 and all that stuff. I can imagine he's under the most incredible pressure. And then for us all to turn on him, that just must be the worst feeling in the world.
I've seen a team sheet, prospective team sheet doing the rounds, and McKenna's not in it. And I think whilst, like you say, I agree, Michaela, everyone pays their money. People, have a right to an opinion, but I think there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a balance between sort of wanting these wholesale changes because Steve Cooper's now an awful manager and Scott McKenna is a bang average footballer and Joe Worrell's only ever good in the Championship. There's got to be a balance between that and sort of whatever's on the other side. I think football fans can just be so sort of fickle sometimes, and I can include myself in that. Quite short-sighted where things happen, and because we're all so invested and passionate, and we've been swept away by this wonderful season and this thing that Steve Cooper's done. We've got to be careful that we don't sort of, cut your nose to spite your face and sort of suddenly wish away. Because I agree with you. I think we were really unlucky I think circumstances meant we couldn't get the likes of Garner and particularly Davis, because at the time United didn't want to sell Garner and we were so keen to get business done, understandably, that sort of didn't work out. So I agree. I think we need to keep as many of those players that were instrumental last season, i.e. McKenna, Worrell, Yates, Johnson. They've got to be really in and around it. And, whilst I'm happy, although I'm his number one fan, to say I wouldn't mind if it was Mangala and O'Brien instead of Yates starting, they've got to be right in the mix of it. And that's why I think he probably brought Colback on, because he looked at a side that did not in any way reflect what he wanted.
Colback.
He thought, I'm going to put him on as a... It's like a matter of principle.
The views he got is ridiculous. Come on, guys. It's not, he doesn't pick himself.
And we're not exactly. And we got to remember what he did at left back. Against Arsenal, against Liverpool, and look, don't get me wrong. I completely understand from a constructive criticism level that Jack Colback isn't at the same point as in his career as someone like O'Brien or Mangala or Foyler. That's fine. I'm willing to. I'm not hopelessly romantic, but don't give him personal criticism if the manager's thrown him on. If Steve Cooper would have turned round to the C Block yesterday and said, Max, there's some shin pads, and some boots, come and put them on and come on, I'd have gone on, because that's what you want. So,
but that's the thing. And I think,
that.
No, well, we all would have stormed the pitch. No, but I think, someone like Colback, the way he was treated before he came into Steve Cooper's side and was became this god for us. I think he played completely out of position and did a bloody good job. He did such a good job. He kept a proper left back out of the team and thing. We've got to, and then he's being booed off the pitch and being slapped. Come on, people. He didn't pick him. He didn't say put me on instead of O'Brien. He's just had COVID, for Christ's sake. That's get some perspective, people. And that's
perspectives in everything. Perspectives, everything, but equally, those players they don't deserve Twitter threads full of vitriol and nonsense, but they do deserve criticism for a very lacklustre performance. And that's where I think we haven't got the balance, maybe as a unified fan base.
It wasn't a good performance at all. It was probably one of our worst performances under Cooper, and I'm sure we were in the car rowing about it in my household, saying oh God, that was awful. It was awful, and we capitulated. It wasn't good at all, and they looked. from a personal point of view, I think they're just knackered and overwhelmed from Man City. I think they just looked tired, and it's like being kicked in the guts, isn't it, over and over again. And
Michaela, what would your front three? What would your attacking lineup look like? I'm really interested because I feel really strongly about starting Taiwo or Surridge, having a recognised striker, and then biting the bullet with either Johnson, Gibbs White, or Lingard. But what do you think in terms of us moving forward?
I think look, Johnson's earned his place in the team, hasn't he? He's done brilliantly. Yeah. But I think Sam, I was horrified that he wasn't even on the bench against his old team. There's a lot of history there. My husband thinks I'm crazy, but I think when you've left a team and they've treated you badly and you're there to prove a point, I think Sam, being the finisher that he is and being the person that he is, I think he would have been a perfect person. I would have started him. But, I'm a romantic. But I think he needed to. Lingard, for me, it doesn't work for me. I just don't. I'm sure. I know he's a good footballer, but I think Morgan Gibbs White is phenomenal. I think he's absolutely brilliant, and I think every time he touches the ball, you think something good's going to happen. So, for me, I think, Lingard would be my one that I'd probably stick on the bench, and and I think you've got to have I always say his name wrong, Taiwo. Is it Taiwo? Yes, I mean that's him, and or Sam. I think you've got to play a striker, haven't you? And it's the Premier League. You've got to with our team, we're going to have to take those chances, and when we take them, I want someone that can score a goal. Like it's always Ryan Yates, isn't it? When the ball goes in, you're like, it's going to be Ryan.
Yeah.
But for me, I would for that game, I definitely would have started Sam, or I would have at least had him on the bench. And I think it might have been a different outcome.
I wonder if he didn't start because there were lots of rumours about him going on loan, and perhaps I don't know, but perhaps he was maybe pushing for that because he maybe didn't see a route into the first team, and so I wonder if that's why.
Without giving too much, well. Be careful.
That wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to happen.
No,
from the start.
I had a long. That's just all. It was just an idiot putting that on Twitter. Yeah. Right. It wasn't. It's not in his plan. He's very happy. So.
And it didn't feel like Cooper really likes Surridge. It feels like he's one of his sons. that he's adopted. And so
Sam
I would have been very
surprised. Brick wall for that bloke.
Yeah.
So I think I can imagine. It's not very pleasant to be Sam Surridge at the moment. I think he wants to play, and I personally, I think he's one of the best finishers that we've got in our team. So to not have him on against, I think also with the nature of that game, they're one of the kind of the worst opposition we're going to play. So let's say he doesn't trust him or he doesn't think he's as good. I think you've got to chuck him in to see what he's going to do personally, because otherwise. What's the point of having him in the club? And you should loan him out then, because it's not fair. Because Sam will score goals for anybody, but I think any of those strikers, they need to play, don't they? And I don't think Lingard, for me, hasn't done enough to earn his place in the team personally. Just because he's on loads of money, I don't think we need to play him. But I don't know. That's just my opinion.
I thought yesterday would have been a good opportunity to play Surridge, actually. If not, I want to, whoever. I thought that, and there was someone just commented actually a moment ago saying, and I'm just going to say, Surridge isn't good enough. I mean, you just look at the time that he actually came to Forest. If you can't tell me he's not the most clinical striker we've got at the club currently based on previous record, well then you're not watching the same game as we are, because, as much as there's all this room in the back.
Though, has he?
No, he hasn't. And he could have been against Bournemouth. That's the disappointing thing for me. I don't know what's gone off. I mean, there's all these rumours of, he was at QPR and everything. He wasn't. He was actually at the game. And as Raddad says, it's his dad. His dad's told us. His dad's told us weeks ago, that this is not going to happen. And that's...
He's very happy. Yeah.
This is what I mean. I said it on Twitter. He's not going to leave. He's not going to leave. And people are saying, yeah, but I've heard this and I've heard this. The people that you're listening to, they're an account created a month ago or a week ago. They've got 13 followers and they've got no profile picture. I mean, how on earth can you tell me that...
To be fair, I scrolled through and I saw it and I was like, what? And then I looked and I'm like, okay, because...
But his own dad's saying it. His own dad saying,
Yeah.
his own dad is saying this,
Phil,
like, and
Phil was quite positive that, and I think the worst thing was Phil did a tweet which was a little bit confusing. I think he hadn't had his coffee, so I think it kind of it stirred it a bit, and then they realised that how it sounded because of this other idiot that posted that Sam was down in London, having a coffee and a bagel at bloody QPR. So, but he's totally happy and totally fine, But I can imagine he was very upset to not be picked.
But he's not. But
game.
he and Taiwo aren't going to be happy for long when they're watching a team play without a striker, without a recognised goal scorer. And I don't care who it is. I sort of think, well, either way, Sam Surridge, I think he's the best finisher I've seen in a Forest shirt for a long time, and I've been going for 22 years. But Taiwo equally. Yes, he's not helped himself. I just think fans have made their mind up from some dodgy pre-season performances. But against West Ham, I thought he looked like an absolute weapon. He had
he's strong, isn't he?
Yeah.
He holds the ball.
The first thing he did when he came on against Bournemouth was absolutely flatten their right back with ease.
It was brilliant.
And I sort of felt like that's what you want. You want, particularly when it's a performance like that, you want a bit of bite. So although we've got very cute and creative players like Johnson, Gibbs, White, Lingard, which is fine, great. You want that in your side. You also want, a bit of fight and a bit of bite.
It's a lot of pressure for Johnson, isn't it? I mean, that kid's given us everything, and then he gets slagged off more than any other player in the whole. I've got people that sit near me who just hate him every time he touches the ball, and it's everyone has someone in the team they don't like, but it's to a point where it's like it's ridiculous. But even for him, you feel like just to have someone else that takes the pressure off him. Maybe that they focus like Sam's on there. They might all focus on Sam and he can have a good old run because we know what Johnson can do. And the same with Gibbs White. They're having to come deeper and deeper to get the ball. So it's hard, isn't it? But yes, I think you need to. I think that mix. I think Lingard's personally for me is the weak link at the moment. He doesn't help like I want him to help. But
I don't think many people are disagreeing. But I do. Sorry, Jamie. Well, last thing I'd say, I sort of feel like I can see where fans might have their criticism of Johnson, but I think that he's a victim of a system that hasn't quite worked itself out yet. And so because we've not got a striker and we're working out this sort of false nine way of playing, which I don't think really work, and I think Cooper will hopefully bin that after the past three results. But I think because he is our prodigy and because he's been so fantastic for us, naturally fans' criticisms go towards him. But I don't think it's through lack of effort. I don't think it's through him suddenly being a poor player. I think it's that he's now, strangely enough, become our focal point in the centre in a striking position. And that's not his game. If I'm left-handed, if you want to play tennis against me and say you can only play right-handed, well, I'm not going to be as good as I would be with my left hand. And so I think that there is a little bit of that with Johnson.
And I think as well, I don't think Cooper knows his best 11 yet, does he?
No.
And really, how can he? Because he's got all these new players. And I think it's hurting all the players because he doesn't quite... I think for me, putting Cole back on summed it up. It was like, I trust him. I know he'll do a good job. I'll put him in. Rather than put in... a £20 million guy who he might be like, oh, I'm not sure how he's going to mesh. At least with Jack, he knows, right, chuck him on. I think O'Brien I think O'Brien should start every game. I think he's been magnificent since he came in. So I think that was the first mistake he made. But I think that, I think Cooper knowing his first 11 and sticking with it and I know in the Premier League you have to switch it in and out, but I think at the moment he's a bit like, oh, I don't really know what I want, and he's trying to play that system and it's not helping anybody, is it?
No, and I think, and I think with the whole Jack Colback thing, and I understand what you're saying about the trust element of it, and it's obvious that Cooper does like Jack Colback. He's a player that was, kind of forgotten about for quite a few years before he came back into the team, and he really showed why he deserved to be in the team last year. But that's last year for me. That's last year, and I'm not saying that there's nothing that he can do this year. There's going to be a place, and obviously he did whatever he did at Bournemouth, and he wasn't awful. But for me, it just felt like we had some form of momentum, which wasn't perfect for me. I don't think that we were playing incredibly and we looked like we were just going to go out and smash them. We got a penalty and fair enough. But, the lead didn't feel secure for me. I never feel secure with a 2-0 lead. It's a 3-0 lead for me, and I'm not feeling secure. There was a part of me that said that first half, sorry, there was pieces of us where we could have been exploited massively, and they just haven't done that yet.
I didn't think we played very well. Yeah.
No, we didn't. But for me, bringing on Colback,
the cracks massively.
But it's not like we lost momentum when we were making those subs, though. For me, I think you should have brought someone like O'Brien on and kept some form of momentum going instead of reducing it.
We were screaming. O'Brien seemed like the perfect sub to me, like absolutely the perfect guy to bring on. I've never been a fan of Cooper's subs personally. I always think he's a bit. I always think he leaves. I've never thought, like, particularly this last few games, I'm like, oh my God, like he knows better than me, but I'm never a huge fan of them. But I think O'Brien totally should have come on. I think he would have, not that I think he would have changed the game completely, but I think we were missing a bit of that pace, a little bit of that. I love the way he's like a little terrier. I think he's been outstanding since he came in. I really do. Absolutely brilliant. I think he's, in the Premier League, he's handled it really well. I'm very impressed with him.
And I just want to point out something that Dave said. Now, Dave talks sense. If you know Dave, he talks sense. And I'm sorry to cut off half your face there, Michaela. With this, the streaming service doesn't make it easy.
No, Dave, I'm surprised all our faces aren't covered. To be fair, he's very succinct today.
This long.
Hey, well, listen. What Dave says, and actually, he's got a brilliant playlist, by the way, on a different point. We were talking about all the Manchester bands not that long ago. Amazing. If you want to speak to David about music, please do. He's just as knowledgeable. But on this, Dave says life is too short for hatred and castigating individuals. Sorry, I can't say that. Stand as a team, fall as a team. Everything I can see and think of is Leeds United at Ellen Road a week tomorrow. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that, as I've said so many times, the difference between constructive criticism and actually just berating a player. I saw it yesterday. And, in the Peter Taylor said, you would have heard this, Max, obviously, if you're sitting, you're not far from where I sit, and the things that I heard being pelted at Brennan Johnson, specifically, I was like, I've not actually heard people shouting and do this, since probably the Houghton era, and that for me really worried me a little bit because, okay, he didn't have his best game and whatever else. And, perhaps, as you say, a victim of the formation or the tactic that's being used. But to say things that that fans have said, for me, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
He's someone's kid. He's like 21. Like not that that's an excuse, but that kid's given us everything. He probably could have moved some, established Premier League team. And he chose us. That kid's Forest through and through. Like, not that gives you a free pass because I'm not, but yeah, some of the crap that you hear, and it verges on something that's really nasty, and I will not tolerate that at all anywhere near me. So when it starts going a little bit into that territory, it's like there's no place for that in this club at all. So it's wrong. It's totally wrong, and like it's the whole thing's wrong at the moment. Like anyone, like it's just weird. I think people are very strange, and you suddenly cast aside players that you've loved because some shiny new things come in. You don't even. I bet half the people don't even know who these players are. They can't even say their names.
All of a sudden, there's a load of Bundesliga and League on experts on the cards, isn't there? And look, don't get me wrong. It's so difficult as a Forest fan. Let's just forget the past couple of games. It's so difficult as a Forest fan not to be just so excited like a kid in a sweet shop because we've got all of these flashy new players and you want to see them. But like anything, there has to be a level of, you've got to bed yourself into a club. You've got to understand. Look, Emmanuel Dennis is an incredibly talented player, but when he came on the other week, it was very clear, despite his talent and his pace and his strength, he didn't really know quite what, where he was. And that's understandable because he needs time to fit in. And I just sort of feel very much that being in the Premier League, like never before, the eyes are on this club. And because of yesterday's loss, there is TalkSport are going to have a field day. Some the Graham Souness's of the world, and I don't necessarily not like Graham Souness, but those sorts of pundits, they're going to love. Oh, crikey, they're going to love writing Forest off because I think we came up from the Championship on this charm offensive, and everyone, the neutrals, the pundits, and the the punters, all of them were loving it. But now we've signed all these players. There's a target on our back now.
Oh, yeah.
And the last thing that we want to do as fans, look, we can criticise the players. They deserved criticism, but taking it to that next step of just sort of vitriol isn't just going to harm the players' confidence, but it's going to just put an even bigger weight, a needless weight on the shoulders of the club. And what I want more than anything is for Steve Cooper to come out this week and sign a contract. I want, to know that Marinakis is like, this is okay. This is going to be a whirlwind. We just need perspective at the club. We don't want, I think we're running the risk maybe if this narrative continues of being like a ship without a sail in a storm, because although we've got a great strong culture at the club, we've got a great manager, we've got some strong players in there, this is all very new for fans, a whole new generation of fans, for the players that have come in. And what we don't want to do is to sort of have this sort of real negative tone. So yes, we should rightly be absolutely fuming about yesterday's performance. I was incredibly angry, but like Dave says, we got a nice, good break for Steve Cooper to get them in, get their heads together and sort it out. And I've got no doubt that the man to do it is that Welshman, Steve Cooper.
I agree completely. And let's not, we just don't want to go down that road again. We've done it, where you throw the baby out with the bathwater, like with Karanka and stuff. Like, let's just steady the ship, take a minute, take a deep breath. It's going to be okay. We've signed some really good quality players. It will gel. I'm confident that we're going to stay up. I really am. I feel very confident that we've got we've got enough quality in that side to gel together and do something great. So, but be positive, people. Don't name players on Twitter.
And also remember that we're not even anywhere near a quarter of the way through the season. There's 32 games left, and Mark is joining the stream now to give us his thoughts on that. So, Mark, welcome to the stream. I hope you're doing well. Now, Mark, I can see that you're a Forest fan with the lovely kit that you've got on. Although I'm a bit on the fence with the third kit, I must admit. But it looks good in person.
I'm with you, Mark. I love it, mate. Great.
I love it.
I love
it. It's the best quality one by a mile.
Exactly that.
Well, okay then. I apologise for that. I've heard the fabric's
nice. You should
nice.
apologise, Jay.
I publicly apologise. I prefer the home one. Just saying. But how did you feel about yesterday's game? I think we can all agree that we didn't like yesterday's game, can we? Let's hope. But Mark, what did you make of it?
Unfortunately, we couldn't go to the game yesterday, but we watched some of the first half. It was a bit difficult, but it looked great from the bits that we did see. But obviously, we was following it on Sky Sports News after that, and it just said that just the way it all happened, it just felt a bit like, as has already been said, Chris Hughton days. Just because of the way it all come around. I know we haven't got him, but that's the way it felt at the time. But the only thing I think is it's just a bit worrying at the moment for me, because we have signed all these players. And I just feel you just feel a bit of disharmony setting in, like where somebody's got to name the team the day before, wherever that's come from. What's that all about? Why have we got that? Because it's like this crack's starting to appear so early on. Maybe I don't know what you think, whether you think the same thing, but and the other thing as well is it's like we've got so many strikers. Some teams are saying they haven't. I was talking to a Leeds United supporter the other day, and he was saying they've got no strikers at the moment. And we've got 3 number 10s and we've got 3 number 9s. So how's this all going to come? I'll ask you guys, how's it all going to come together? Are we going to keep rotating with the strikers, or are we going to settle for like a 2 or a 3? And that's what it's going to be for a while. I mean, I'm just not sure myself.
The concern for me is, and I know that, Michaela, you mentioned the keeping the band together approach, which I don't think was an awful idea. Personally, I think that I don't know how well they do in the Prem, to be honest. And I know there's that chemistry there, but I still think we had to make signings. Obviously, we've made a lot, and we've had to make quite a lot. We've had a lot of departures despite everything as well, and also some of those players we knew we were never going to get back, like Spence. It was from January. It was just he knew what he wanted. But in terms of that, I think that bringing in this many players, which, I'm not saying that we didn't have to do, I'm not going on any of those rants, but it was always going to bring disruption. But unfortunately, we're in a position now where there's even more disruption of, okay, well, we've got to put new players into potentially new formations, or even at times you see in Forest use two or three different formations in a game. And that's quite disruptive, really. You've got players like Dennis who, could play as the forward, but really wants to play as a winger. That's not an advantage to another player. So you can please one player, but you can't please another. It's a shame, really, because no matter what formation you go to, you're kind of nullifying to a degree another player's full potential. Like, if you go to a 4-3-3, for example, you're not going to see the same Loddy and Nico Williams that you'd see in a five at the back where they're wing backs. Do you know what I mean? And that's unfortunate, really. So I don't know how, Max and Michaela feel about this, and also yourself as well. But for me, this is the unfortunate part of. And sorry, and Michaela's leaving, by the way. So Michaela, thank you for joining us too. It's okay. Take care.
See you, Michaela.
But Max, I'll ask you this question then.
Yeah.
Obviously, kind of as part of Mark's thing. It's disruptive. But do you think a formation change is absolutely what we need now?
No, but if it happens, then I don't think it's sort of completely out of the question. I do think, sort of to answer Mark, obviously, look, I wish we knew, and that's, I guess, why we're here, is because we don't know, but we're trying to use our energy to talk about it instead. But I think what Cooper, I think, will do is to be slightly more pragmatic and play one striker up front, probably Taiwo. And I say that because that's just what we've seen. It's either been those three players, it's either been Morgan Gibbs-White, Lingard and Johnson in that fluid three, or it's been Taiwo. And so following the poor performance and following the three losses, I do think that he will go back to that. He'll go back to the sort of formation that we saw at the end of last season, or last season under Cooper. Because and if he doesn't, Mark, I must say, it could work. But if he doesn't, it would sort of feel change from a place of panic. Because if he's got this system that's worked for him last season and against West Ham, and then he goes for something completely different, then that would seem a little bit of too much of an overhaul for me. That's what I'd say. What do you think, Mark? Do you think that he's going to sort of hold his line and play that front three of Lingard, Morgan Gibbs-White and Johnson, or do you think that he's going to sort of go back to the sort of formation we saw last season?
I haven't got a clue, really. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that he's going to have to play with a striker the next time. But, the one thing about him is, I do think when I saw his interview, his post-match interview afterwards, he did seem, he's obviously really disappointed, but he didn't look like he was, look at the way Parker was when I know they got beat 9-0. But look at the way Parker was in his interview. He was flat. He was deflated. I mean, 9-0 is a little bit different to losing 3-2. I mean, that, probably feels just as devastating for us. But, I mean, he just seemed pretty cool, I felt he knows what the problem is. And he's going to roll his sleeves up and deal with it.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I completely agree. I've got a mate who he's one of the coaches at Leicester, and he came to the Forest derby match with me last season, and he said one of the things that struck him, and he spends a lot of time watching Brendan Rodgers essentially do his job, is how calm Steve Cooper was throughout that, even when Ravel Morrison got sent off, even when the game was at its most intense. And then he noticed it against Liverpool, and he always says to me, he's incredibly calm. And whilst it was very clear his disappointment, he said he came out from the second half, half-time talk, and felt like it was very good. The boys were focused. And so although it's really disappointing, I do really think that was a one-off performance. I don't think we'll see a performance like that for the rest of the season. I'm going to put my cards on the table. They deserve the criticism. But like you say, I think Steve Cooper looked, in his element, even though he was absolutely, disappointed. I mean, look, and that's the great thing about him.
They say the making of the man is you see the true man in adversity. And
absolutely,
at the end of the day, when he's faced with what he's faced with, and look, at the end of the day, we've had a bit of a bad result. Everton was a little bit disappointing, but still a good result away. We was all a bit disappointed midweek. I'm not sure that he got the tactics quite right there, you know. But he's learning again, a bit like a few of the players, a bit like the lads that we've brought through the academy and that have stayed with us. You know, they've never played he's never managed in the Premier League. Yates, Worrell, and Johnson have never played in the Premier League before. So, you know, what do you expect them to hit the ground running? I mean, let's face it, it's not really. It's understandable, isn't it? Really,
Absolutely.
They might early on, you know.
One thing I think of is last season, and it's slightly different circumstances, but you know, more similar than different. Everyone wrote off, myself included, and they wrote them off, didn't they? And Eddie Howe came in, and everything changed, and they finished 9th with like the 4th best record of points since he came in. And whilst it's a slightly different situation, we've just had an absolute stinker of a game and a pretty bad week. But after that Spurs game, even though we lost, the feeling was very different because of the performance and what we'd seen previously. And so, again, I'm not saying that fans that are watching this aren't right to feel frustrated. They absolutely are, and I feel the same. But it is one game, and I do think that they've got Cooper in particular, and Worrell and Yates and Johnson have got the moral fibre to make sure that even if they do lose against Leeds, that it's in completely different circumstances to yesterday. So, look, if this happens for the next 5 games running, then we've got something to worry about. But we've got a long way to go, and I think we're quick learners.
Well, let me put it to you then, gents. I mean, you know, obviously looking at Leeds as the next game, they've just come off a 5-2 battering from Brentford in a game that I actually predicted to be a 2-2 draw. I had it for. But it seems my predictions haven't been that good this week. So a team that has conceded a lot clearly has its own defensive issues, and they've brought in signings and whatever else. And, you know, there's people jumping to the conclusion now, I'm just seeing in the chat, that Forest have wasted all this money, etc., etc. But these new players, I mean, you know, I think we'll probably see O'Brien and maybe Freuler back in the squad, no doubt. I can't see Yates really starting. And for me, he shouldn't start that next game against Leeds. Just for me, I just don't think that's what we need at that point. But do you really maybe see a couple of the new lads, in particular defensive lads, playing against Leeds, Mark? You know, particularly like Willy Bolly. Do you see him playing, or maybe Loic Bade getting a start? Because they've got to start at some point.
Yeah, I can see him coming in. I mean, one thing I noticed on the second goal. No, I think Cook's been brilliant for us. He was fantastic when he come in. He did look a little bit slow on the second goal. If you watch him, he's marking, I think the 5 or something pulled off. I can't remember. And he went to the back post and he was sort of ball watching a little bit, and he let the guy go. And he's the one who headed it back into the box when they scored the goal. I think, you know. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I think we might have to make a change in the centre. I don't know whether Bolly is the type of player to go in the centre. I'm not sure really I'm not sure. I mean, one thing about all of this, losing Niakate, who was doing really well in the first few games, has, you know, put a little bit of a dent in us. We needed him to be fit, stay fit for a while. He was outstanding, you know, and even when we played against Man City in the week, you know, against Erling Haaland, he played against him in Germany last year, so he would have known a bit about him and about how to play against him. And losing him was massive. And it's just, you know, we've brought all these players in. We've started to use some of them. Some of them got injured. Now we're bringing in a few more, and it's just. I mean, I even felt, just one thing I will say on this. Even the pre-season friendlies, because there were so many players coming in, it was, you know, it wasn't that we had a settled squad and we could go into like 5 or 6 friendlies and we could use all them players and we could try different things. You know, there's new players coming in all the time. So the pre-season friendly, you know, it gave us something, but it didn't really do what it was meant to do, you know, and it's unfortunate. It's nobody's fault. And we are a victim of our own success because we had so many loan players, because, you know, there are players that are deemed not good enough for the Premier League. And we've had to make changes, and we've had to bring in a little bit of better quality. But we've got to trust Cooper in that he can bring all these personalities and characters together and make them believe that they're all valuable. Because some of these lads haven't even, you know, like Bianconi and people like that, they haven't hardly kicked the ball so far, have they? So how do you, he's got to keep them all. He's got to keep them all keen. He's got to keep their spirits up. And regarding who we bring in, or whether we play with a 5, I mean, I'm not quite sure really. I'm not quite sure what we do there. But I think if we're going to stick with a 5 or stick with a 3-5, whichever way you want to look at it, the 3 defenders, I think we might have to make at least one change, and it might be that Bolly has to come in. But again, he hasn't had a chance to play with these guys, and he's gonna get 1 week on the training ground. So, it's really a tough decision for Cooper to make. I mean, obviously, I'm just hoping that, and that I think. Do you know what? I think that's why he stuck with the 3 on the weekend, because he knows, and even last season, this Bournemouth team they've made a couple of additions. They didn't sign players, and them 3 defenders stood up to Bournemouth last season. So he was pretty sure that them players have played with each other, and I think that's part of the problem why he hasn't made too many changes, because he trusts Cook, Worrell, and Cook, Worrell, McKenna.
But of course, to a degree, and this isn't by no means to defend any performances individually or any decisions made that perhaps weren't the right decisions in our eyes. But you do have to ask the question. Of course, they do have to be introduced at some point. And I think yesterday would have been the right time to introduce the likes of Willy Bolly, for example. But, at the same time, though, surely he's just looking at it going, I mean, I just want to get the win today. Let's just put out the same team and I trust them more. But do you know what I mean? It's really difficult, because as much as I kind of think, fair enough, we kind of trust these guys, they've done it, this and this. At the same time, it's like, well, you need a bit of fresh air almost in that defence. But when is actually the right time to bring in those defenders and do that, Max? What do you think?
This is the last thing I'm going to answer, Jay, just because I've got to bounce. But it's a great question. I do think, in many ways, if there's ever been a time to make a change at the back, it's now. We've conceded a lot of goals. I've forgotten the actual number. The past 3 games, we've conceded 3 to Bournemouth. With the greatest respect to them, we shouldn't have done that. I'd think that it'll probably bring Bolly in, whilst it's not the most adventurous, and Loic Barde's probably slightly more exciting and got more pace and younger, maybe more potential. Bolly's proven in the Premier League he's solid. I think he plays a very similar game to that of McKenna and Worrell. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Bolly, because you've got a good 9-day break to sort of get him sort of bled into the side a little bit. So that's what I'd say, Jamie, in terms of the defence. That's what I can see, and I can see it staying as the normal formation.
Well, Max, thank you for joining us. I know you've got to head off. So, everybody, that was the amazing Max from the Red at 1865. So, cheers for joining. Take care, and
cheers, Jamie.
We'll see you very soon. Hopefully, see you at the stadium as well. So that was Max there, everyone. Now we've got Mark still on the line. Now, Mark, I'll ask you just one more question before we bring Liam in just after you. Now, looking ahead at Leeds, you've got 9 days to prepare for it. I've got 9 days to prepare for cocktails, because that's what I'm going to be drinking whilst on the beach and watching a bit of Forest. But on a serious note, though, what do you think would be the starting 11 against Leeds? Now, of course, it's far ahead in the future and whatever. But right now, what would you say would be your starting 11?
Well, I think it's pretty much what Max said, just with the defence. So I think we would sort of, I think we would keep the same. With one change, which I think Cook would go and Bolly would come in. I think Worrell, McKenna, obviously Williams at right back, Loddy. And then I think in the midfield, I think Yates maybe has to have a little bit of a rest there. And I think we have to look at, if O'Brien is fit, which we presume he is, then he's got to come back in. And I think we've 2 in midfield. So then that would be, I mean, look, if Mangala's been injured, so I don't think you can bring him straight back in. No, see what he's like, see if he can. I mean, this is all about trying to, whether it's the defence and midfielder up front, trying to get some sort, isn't it? Who's O'Brien going to be better with? Is he better with Yates? Is he better? But, give Freuer a go, maybe. He's probably chomping at the bit to play. And then up front, I think we should go Johnson. I would go. I'd maybe go. Well, I'll go with Taiwo, and then I'd go Morgan Gibbs-White. So that's the 11 I would go with.
So looking into that game, then, do you think we've got it? Well, do you think we can get 3 points from that?
Yeah, I don't see no reason why not. I don't see really knows. I mean, that's a typical sort of thing Cooper could do. He could turn it around. He can turn it around. In that one game, I'm sure he'll pull them all in. Once the dust is settled, they've got quite a long week training now, haven't they? Before the next game. Obviously, it's the following Monday. So I don't see no reason why not. I'm not sure. Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, a point wouldn't be a disaster either. Away at Leeds, but fingers crossed. Yeah, he can. But as I said before, in the little bit of adversity we've got here, I'm pretty sure he's quite a cool customer. So hopefully, he's not. One thing's for sure. If everyone else is fretting over it, Cooper doesn't look like he is. So hopefully I'm hopeful. I mean, I'm not as despondent as some of the fans have been, especially on Twitter. Everyone seems to be panicking and we've got to change this, we've got to change that, get rid of the manager. It's all nonsense. It's complete nonsense. Why would you do that? It took us 27 managers to get to here. Why would we get rid of him and then go again and go again? And it's just we'll end up back where we was. It's
certainly not what we need right now. But Mark, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us your opinions. Definitely have you back on again soon. We're going to have Liam on in just a moment. So
have a good
thank
holiday.
you. Oh, thank you very much, mate. There'll be plenty of photos posted on Twitter. Don't worry about that. But yeah, cheers, mate. Thank you so much for joining. That was the amazing Mark there, everybody. So coming up now, we've got Liam. Now, Liam, still looking fresh with the haircut. Look, it hasn't quite grown yet. But that Bournemouth game, not massively impressive. But what would you completely change that midfield? I think I'd probably bring on Freuler and O'Brien. There's arguments about physicality and all this and this and height, but for me, I think we need pace and we need momentum. Because at the end of the day, the Premier League is a very fast-paced league, and for me, I think Yates and Kouyaté, they're not that pacey. So, maybe it worked a little bit in the first half, or to some degree it managed to work. But for me, in that second half, you needed to keep the momentum of what we had and bring on someone like O'Brien and Freuler, and then, and do something different. But a 4-3-3 is something we mentioned a little bit earlier on, maybe having a Wani or Surridge up top with Dennis and Johnson either side. Does that do things for you, or are you not interested in that? Oh, we think we've lost him there. See if he joins back in just a moment. Everybody, apologies for this.
Sorry.
It's all right, mate. It's all right. Well, the question I was asking was 4-3-3, potentially Surridge up front, Johnson to the right and Dennis to the left. What do you think about that?
I'm going to be really controversial, but I think Johnson needs a game out. I think something like that is going to give him the kick he needs. I'm not doubting he's one of our best players, but Saturday, I don't think it was the best Johnson we've seen this season. I think he needs that game out to give him a kick up the arse and be like, "Come on, mate." My Morgan Gibbs-White on Saturday I thought was quality. Them little nippy runs that he's doing and finding the space. But other than that, I'd go with Dennis over Johnson to see what he can do for a game.
And I do want to just say as well,
controversial and everyone loves Johnson, but it's not down to his ability. I just think right now he needs a kick up the arse and be like. But I think a game out would do that for him.
Yeah, maybe that's what he needs. But also you've got to remember that there's probably not going to be a more critical person of Johnson than himself. You know what I mean? And him and Worrell were actually out for dinner this afternoon. What they were talking about, I don't know. But I can imagine for the both of them, they're probably not feeling particularly as brilliant as you'd expect them to. And there was people talking to me earlier and saying, well, what about the money they're on and this and this? But, at the end of the day, the amount of abuse that people have got, I mean, it's specific Worrell and Johnson, it's incredible. And I mean, it's ridiculous. Do I think they could have played better? Probably. But I mean, for Worrell, there's a few obstacles that he's got to overcome as a defender, and as a player, and there's things that he can improve in his game. And I'm sure he knows that. For Johnson, I just don't think the tactics really working with him that much. And also, I don't think that people shouting at him, calling him a prick and all, and all this kind of thing. I don't really think that helps him anymore.
I know that's stupid, but what I saw from Saturday is we're playing negative right now, and that's not Cooper's way. It's a negative ball. As soon as the pressure comes onto us, we're straight back to Worrell, and then Worrell straight back to Henderson. Henderson's invited pressure on, and then it's a boot long, which is not Johnson's game. When you put it in the air with Johnson, it's just stupid doing that. And that's what I saw a lot in both halves on Saturday. Just this negative play of the triangles disappeared. And, it's the last couple of games where it seemed to go back to Henderson and then we try and start again. But then we just invite pressure because they knock it off, like against Man City. How many times did we knock it long and then Man City were so good that they just passed it through us again?
And you know what? And the last couple of games have been annoying, deflating, and obviously 3 losses on the bounce. It's not something to be particularly happy about in any circumstance, but there's a lot of things that we can improve on and a lot of things that, as much as people will go, oh, it's just doom and gloom and nothing's going to change. I think a lot will change when we go to the next game.
I don't believe it's doom and gloom. I still 100% believe we're going to stay up, and I believe in the team. I've got questions about our strikers right now, but we're in a transition. We've just signed so many players that, 5 games in? 6 games is it now? 5?
Yeah, 6 games.
We're in that transition period. And I believe until November, that's like, I don't know if you saw when you said, oh, can we beat Leeds? I shook my head. I think what we're going to do is slowly build on positives until it's at the right amount where we can go and win games.
I just want to think about because obviously we want to go and get the 3 points off Leeds. I've said for me, for what we need, 4 points is a minimum from those 2 games. We need to get at least a win out of Fulham or Leeds. We need that. Do I think we'll get it? I think we could do. But things are going to have to change. But, the mention of being overrun in the midfield, if you look at games like Newcastle, where we were overrunning the midfield, Man City, Tottenham to a degree, a little tiny bit, but we were a bit better in the midfield. We were okay. But look at the games where we were overrunning the midfield massively, such as Newcastle and Man City in particular, where the midfield had been pretty poor. I mean, the whole team struggled, hasn't it? The whole team entirely. So for me, I think that, looking at it, why putting out Yates and Kouyaté, they're going to get overrun every time. So why even risk that? For me, they're just not strong enough as a couple. Maybe Ryan Yates would do better with O'Brien next to him. I don't know. But for me, I thought he was better when he came on as a sub, for example, at Everton. But yeah, I think O'Brien and Freuler maybe would be the better option at Leeds. But I think Gordon, you're being ridiculous now, to be honest. I don't usually say things like that.
He's not going to get sacked.
And also, you're saying that Surridge isn't Premier League standard. But what opportunity has he been given to prove that he's Premier League standard? Because he goes there every week.
He's our best striker currently.
He's the most clinical. He's the most proven striker that we've actually got there now. Everybody's saying Awoniyi, who I agree should get more football and start. But in reality, for the club, Surridge is the more clinical striker. But obviously, Awoniyi's played in a top division and has been proven to be clinical in a better division than the Championship, if you like. So there's arguments here and there. But how can you say Surridge isn't Premier League proven when he hasn't been given the chance to showcase that talent? For me, that's my concern. And I think he's a great player. And I think that anybody that casts any doubt on him, are people that haven't even, watched him play. And I know that you're saying that, well, do you think Marinakis will put up with it? Well, if he goes trigger happy, it will go even worse. He's not an idiot. Evangelos Marinakis is not an idiot. You know what I mean? And these people saying he doesn't have any patience in this. Well, you've got to in the Premier League. You've got to have patience to a degree. The thing we've got with Cooper is a project. And yes, it means that we could lose a few games. It might not be the most beautiful of seasons in the Premier League. Who went into this season and went pushing for Europe? We're going to do this. We're going to do this. It's so much more difficult than people imagine. And just because we beat West Ham, people were thinking, right, that's it. Season's easy. Beat Everton and Bournemouth. Oh, that's easy. Don't even have to worry about that. That is absolutely ridiculous. And for people to say that a change of management is needed or should be needed within the next game or two is stupid. And for me, I just think that to even make that decision as a fan now is it's wrong. And, when it comes to Surridge, okay, yes, he hasn't. We don't know if he's Prem proven yet, but that is simply because he's not had enough time. You know what I mean? And will he get that time? I don't know. He didn't want to leave Forest. And that's the reality of why he didn't go and go on loan. He had offers. He had a load of offers, but he didn't want to go because he loves Forest and he loves Cooper. So this is it. And I think people need to look at it as a point of, well, Surridge hasn't been given the opportunity. So why can you say he's not good enough? And for everybody that thought we were just going to get top half and that it'd be easy, you need to study the Premier League a bit more. There's been record spending in the Premier League this year by almost every team. Look at teams like Southampton that were destined to go down by some people. I mean, not saying that won't happen, but they've started off incredibly, haven't they? So, Liam, what do you think about that? I mean, let's talk about Marinakis, because G. Cullis here says no owners have patience in the Premier League. I mean, you've got to have patience to a degree, because at the end of the day, you've spent £25 million as a straight fee on a player just for Cooper, which of course was going to always benefit the team, but it was Cooper's player that he wanted. You've got to have an element of patience with him, and as well as, considering how much Cooper has done and is yet to do for the club. How long do you think Marinakis will stick with Cooper?
See, this season, minimum. I mean, I can't think he's that stupid that he thinks we're going to come up and win every game, having such a new squad. Like, that would be stupid to think that we're going to come up and just dominate everything. Have we got a good squad? Yeah, I'd say the bottom 6 to 8 teams, we've probably got the best squad. And Morgan Gibbs-White, what a signing. I think he's come on this season even more. But to believe, like I said a minute ago, I think we're still in that transition period where all these players have just come to us. They're all going to be finding out how each other play.
And that's it, and I think you're bringing in new players like Loddy in particular that, and Bade that don't speak a hell of a lot of English as well. So it's going to be quite difficult communication wise. But G. Cullis, name a team that has patience. I mean, maybe you can look at Leicester. They've done worse than we have. Their owners are being patient. They've said that they will stick by Brendan Rodgers, and look, I think that they'll give Cooper till Christmas, I think, to make something of this, because of course, and no one's saying that he'll sack Cooper though if we don't. But there is people saying that they'll sack Cooper. Even TalkSport behind me at the weekend was saying if Forest lose the next 2 games, they're going to sack Cooper. I mean, they're sitting there pretending like they know this. I mean, nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. And I think the unfortunate part of it is, Liam, is a large proportion, and by no means am I saying that Gordon or anybody, in this, because I love all of you that are commenting, by the way. And it's good that we're having the debate now, and this is good. But, I can't even begin to fathom the idea of people suggesting that he's going to be sacked. But it's the people that claim they're in the know on Twitter in particular and starting all these rumours. It's creating a toxic atmosphere. Just think back to a few weeks ago when we were here on this stream and we just beat West Ham. We were on a complete high. The fan base was brilliant and we just thought, this is it. Steve Cooper's going to do it. we've lost a few games on the bounce, and it's not nice and it's not easy. But sacking him will only cause more disruption. So Liam, the final question just before we leave the stream. Looking ahead at Leeds, 3 points. Oh, Liam's left. There you go. It seems as though Liam didn't want to answer that, unfortunately. But for everybody that is still on, then yeah, we're going to give it another 5 more minutes of chat there. Unfortunately, Liam did leave the stream. I'm not quite sure why, but I think that and look, and G Cullis, I'm sure Marinakis he just wants the best for Forest, of course. But Liam's still here, no worries.
My missus rang me and it lags my phone out, so.
Oh, right. Oh, hey, don't want anybody in doghouse. Don't worry, I understand it. But the last question of the stream, just before we leave, and I just want to thank everybody for joining. And if you can, just leave a like if you can on the video. There's 45 likes currently and 123 of you in. It would be a massive help if you can just drop a like. Now, Liam, last thing I want to ask you, going into that Leeds game, lots is probably going to be changed. Do you think we can get the 3 points?
No, I think a draw. And I would happily take a draw. It would be amazing to win. But I think the Premier League this year is so unpredictable. How many teams are leaking goals? Leicester got hit for 5 again today. Brighton still conceded 2. Obviously, Arsenal conceded 3 against
even City, though, they haven't been that impressive when it comes to conceding goals. They've conceded actually quite a lot. And obviously, they drew against Aston Villa yesterday, which was a result that, what team would want, when you're trying to win the Premier League? But it's early season. So 3 points, no. But what about the Fulham game? Because for me, 2 points from those 2 games, okay, it's 2 points, but you're going to need more than that for me.
I think if in the Fulham game, if we just manage to keep Mitrovic quiet, I think that's a massive plus for us. Obviously, he's scored against a lot of teams already. What, 6 in 6 is it? Already. I think we've got more chance of beating Fulham than we have Leeds, and just because of a home fixture.
Well, anything can happen, and look, there's probably going to be someone else doing a stream for me during this time. I'm looking at possible hosts. Because I'm on holiday for the Leeds and Fulham game. So there'll be 2 streams where I'm not actually here. But for anybody interested, don't worry, streams won't stop. It just won't be with me in specific. But thank you for joining me, Liam, and everybody that has joined this evening. It's been good talking. We've certainly had a discussion for the ages. Now we've hit 1,199 subscribers. So if just one more of you subscribes, that's just one more, then we'll hit 1,200. So make it happen, people. And don't forget, we've got a charity donation coming up as well soon. So all your support is much appreciated. It's been good to be back. Let's all keep behind the boys. Let's keep behind Cooper. And more importantly, let's try and stay friends. You know what I mean? We can all have a debate and we can all have a discussion, but we don't need to fall out over it. You know what I mean? We're Forest fans at the end of the day. We all wear the same shirts. We all love the same team. Let's keep behind them, and let's just try and keep a positive atmosphere at the club for the fans and the players. So come on, you Reds. Have a fantastic evening, everybody. Liam, thanks for joining me, my friend. And we'll catch you all very, very soon. Cheers for joining, everybody. Take care. Goodbye.